There's just something about rally games. Their combination of on-road and off-road trails, their balance of risk to reward, and all that mud, snow, gravel, and puddles to tear through. But I don't think I've ever played a rally game where you have to dodge meteors and race through low-gravity environments. Until now. Exo Rally Championship is the galaxy's most dangerous off-road racing event, and I simply can't get enough of it. Everything about this game takes racing to infinity and beyond, from the gorgeous and hostile planets you race across, to the extreme weather, to the vehicles themselves, each equipped with a set of RCS thrusters for maximum in-air precision. So let's dive in and see what this one's all about. There's a lot to learn before you graduate driving school, and while most of that will come directly from mistakes and successes out on the road, so to speak, you'll need to complete a series of tutorials for each vehicle class in order to have any chance of making it big in the championship. Aside from teaching you the controls, these tutorials feature a bunch of extra tips and tricks to implement in your driving, like using your downward thrusters to cushion hard landings, or your upward thrusters to keep yourself from bouncing too high along bumpy surfaces. The RCS thrusters themselves, or Reaction Control System thrusters, found on various types of spacecraft, will take some getting used to. Thankfully, the UTV you start with is limited to tilting left and right and pitching forwards and backwards. The Exo 4 adds those up and down thrusters I'd mentioned earlier, and the Exo 6, named that because it has 6 wheels, gives you full thruster control. The game does also have manual shifting, but I didn't play around with that as there's already a lot to learn here. Aside from these tutorials, there's also a free roam mode where you can explore each planet in whichever vehicle you choose, which is great for testing out different tires and suspension setups. Or you can just enter the first race and hope everything works out for the best, like I did. Each championship takes place across a series of stages on a few different planets, and New Earth, as the name implies, is the most similar to our home planet. The terrain here is very smooth, so your main risk isn't flipping over, it's crashing into trees. Overall, the driving in this game in general is pretty slippery, so trying to zigzag your way through the forest maybe isn't the best idea. New Earth was planted with trees and grasses from Earth over the course of hundreds of years, so the remnants of these giant terraforming structures still dot the landscape. Other than that, this place is pretty smooth sailing. Duel is the rocky desert planet, complete with steep, sharp cliffs and the occasional meteor shower. The sand dunes are even harder for your tires to grip onto than rock or dirt, so you'll need to be very careful when turning and weaving your way between checkpoints. You'll also want to watch out for sand and dust clogging up your thrusters and engine, causing them to overheat. The moon is the moon, and racing along at such low gravity is as difficult as it looks. Personally, I think racing on the moon is kind of a bad experience in general, as it's extremely easy to mess up your entire stage with just a little bit too much gas at the end. But if you want to be the best in the galaxy, you're going to have to make some sacrifices. However, just driving around here in free roam mode, seeing how high you can jump and how far you can bounce is pretty fun. Tensei is quite a beautiful planet that was previously mined heavily for its resources. It's got lower temperatures, which means plenty of iced over lakes and rivers, and the occasional earthquake to brace for due to all that drilling into the planet's surface. A personal favorite sight of mine are these feather trees, which you can mow down quite easily compared to the woody trees on New Earth. And last is the late-game lava planet of Fusang, which has extremely sharp and abrasive rocks, along with lava bombs, lava rivers, lava fountains, and fire tornadoes. Not the kind of place I'd want to hang out for too long, but still beautiful in its own right. Once you've practiced, prepped, and studied up on the locales you'll be visiting, the only thing left to do is drive. And hopefully you'll remember all those helpful tips and strategies you've picked up along the way. And all this starts even before you reach the starting line. A small feature that gives XRC just a little more oomph for me is having to pull up to the starting line for each race. Here you can position and angle yourself ever so slightly to get the perfect start every time. And once the countdown signals you, it's off to the first checkpoint, but getting there isn't necessarily about finding the perfect line and staying on the path, because there is no path. You can go way out of your way to avoid a hazard, or just beeline it and hope the course doesn't screw you over. You do have the option of mapping out your route during the service stage, which I maybe foolishly didn't do very much, but this would certainly be useful, especially if you're playing on a harder difficulty. However you choose to approach these races though, you've got to pay attention to the upcoming gate types and which angle you approach them from so you don't have to come to a dead stop, or worse, reverse course in the middle of a race. Some checkpoints just have 2 flags you need to drive between slalom style, and others need to be passed from either the left or right side. There are also sharp U-turns to watch out for, and even these 360 checkpoints that require you to fully circle the flag before continuing. Unless you're going in a straight line over a relatively smooth surface, speed will be your #1 enemy in this game, even considering all the lava, meteorites, and earthquakes. The terrain on these planets is a lot more extreme than with other rally games, obviously, but the thrusters do offset this difficulty quite a bit. Just make sure you don't run out of fuel or overheat them. While you don't have traditional pace notes being read out to you, there are a few voice lines mostly relaying the distance of the next checkpoint. Other than that, you'll need to rely on the arrows and symbols at the top of the screen to let you know what's coming next. The system is simple, but I never really got confused, especially since the arrows will change shape based on your approach angle to give you the most accurate information possible up until the very last second. Once you've reached the finish line, it may be tempting to let your guard down, but I'd hold off on that until you come to a complete stop, because there are still plenty of ways you can screw things up in your final moments of a race. Exo Rally Championship is an intense game with little room for error, but if you take the time to study, practice, and tweak, I think you'll find an experience like no other. As you can probably imagine, the beefier your PC, the better, since the draw distance is extremely far and the rover physics are complex. If the concept of exploring extraterrestrial worlds at breakneck speeds is interesting to you, but you're not a fan of such punishing gameplay, developer Expletive is also behind 2021's Exo 1. It too has beautiful alien planet generation, but instead of a finicky rover, you'll be piloting a very smooth and futuristic ship through the cosmos. And that's it from me. Happy driving or happy flying to you all, and I'll see you in the next one.